Hi everybody, this is Ingi, and today I thought I'd go through the true meaning of Völund the Smith. So I put a little bit of my own life experiences when I interpret these stories, because some of the Norse myths that I've read, it reminds me of things I've experienced in my own life. And for example, sometimes Odin, in the stories of Odin, he seems like, there's a little intensity there when he's on the Vision Quest, especially Grimnismal, when he lives behind a false mask. It's almost like this is the first time he's ever been on a Vision Quest. Like, he hangs on the fireplace for 8 days. His true self, who's a boy called Agnar, this is his inner child, that he's avoided his whole life, is giving him mead, and he's catching fire at that time. It's the most intense moment. It reminded me when I was studying theta healing in the beginning. We were all uncomfortable with going into the subconscious. So theta healing is meditation, but it's also digging into the subconscious. And a symbol of the subconscious in Norse mythology is Hella. And now, her name actually means holy. But she has a hole called misery, a bed called sorrow, a knife called greed. So there's kind of like in her realm are negative things. And now we think of hell, a place to be avoided, because, if we go there, we're going to be miserable. That's basically what we've been taught now. But our old Norse ancestors didn't think of it like that. They thought, if you're miserable, you have to go into your subconscious and find out why you're miserable. So then you have to go to the hole of misery in your subconscious and challenge that part of yourself. When we did digging, once you see the bottom belief, it's a release. So even though you see the program that made you miserable, basically. And then, so that is also like the holiest journey you can be on. That was her name, is Hella, meaning holy. So now everything's been turned upside down. It's like, avoid anything that can make you unhappy. But what if you are unhappy? Shouldn't you investigate why you're unhappy? And they're like, do not, do that. It's kind of like, we're trapped now, because the one thing that can change us, they have changed the meaning of it. So now, hell is like, avoid hell at all cost. But our ancestors knew they had to go there. They had to go into themselves, and that's called the Vision Quest. And it can be quite an intense experience, which is why they had the hanging ritual. Because unless you're hanging, you want to run out of there. And in the beginning of my training in theta healing, there was a lot of spiritual bypassing. A lot of, I want to dig on being an alien. And I am a true believer in star seeds. But a lot of the times it was avoiding what's going on in the life that we have now. Because that is closer. A past life is further away. So whatever traumatic things happen has been processed in the life between lifetime, a lot of it. So you won't have the intensity to it. And even if there is an intense thing that you haven't fully processed, there will be a similar thing in childhood that you have dealt with then. So, and that's a more raw wound. But no one wants to look at the rawest wound. It's too painful. So it's like past life and alien. That is what people wanted to work on. And that's called spiritual bypassing. And this is why our ancestors had the hanging ritual. There's always a death. When you go into the subconscious and you truly see a bottom belief, that part that held a program there, an emotion, a part of you, that part of you, it's called an ego death. That was symbolized with spearing. But when the seeker is on a Vision Quest, several of the characters will die. So, for example, in cards.min, when Odin gets mead of poetry, he's every character in that story. So Kvasir, who's supposed to be the most knowledgeable being ever, is killed by 2 dwarfs. Their name is Fault and Error. So Kvasir wasn't actually the most knowledgeable. His own arrogance, But Dwarfs and Elves in Norse mythology are the most virtuous beings. They're like the hobbits, They're like the hobbits that have no arrogance, no ego. They have maybe a little bit of ego, but not much. So they can basically see when the seeker needs change. So it's a part of you. It's the most uncorrupted part of you that is very much like your inner child, like Agnar in Grimnismal. So Fault and Error realizes the fault in their own ways. So they kill Kvasir and turn him into mead of poetry. Myth poetry is the pure divine bliss and essence, and turns whoever drinks it into a skald, the high art of skald, which will give you enormous impact in society. So dwarfs and elves have these magical abilities. They can make magical jewelry and magical weapons. That speaks of being very connected to the laws. And when you have a lot of virtues, you can work with the laws. So then you have a lot of control over your own destiny. So that's what dwarfs and elves represent. So in a lot of the stories, especially when there's a lot of intensity there, in the when Odin catches fire in the fireplace, and he has a lot of stuff he goes through in when he gets to Myth poetry as well. They told those stories so that we don't think that our problems are unique. When I was doing theater healing in the beginning, it felt like my problems are bigger than this quest. So what's the point going on the Vision Quest, the digging? They knew, our ancestors knew we would feel this way, therefore they introduced kind of like, it's a big hurdle, in Myth poetry. And when Odin gets Myth poetry, that mead is inside a mountain called Clashing Rock. So they wanted us to know that they understand that we think it is difficult, but if we know that our ancestors also thought this, then our problems are no longer unique, and then that hurdle is taken away. So the hanging ritual is part of it, and the way they sometimes write it, that it's an intense moment. They did that for us, but what about when the seeker is fully on the quest? Like, what if it's their path and they do it again and again and again? They get really good at it. What happens then? And that is Völund. He is a very evolved being. He is, I would say, he represents the Yogis of this world. And the Vision Quest then becomes the seeker is in full control. So they basically also said, if you go on this quest and you do it again and again, it will be easier and easier and easier until you're in full control. So you basically take charge of your life. You're no longer just, a slave to your subconscious. You're in charge. And a lot of the times in this Vision Quest story, there's Maiden with Mead. Maiden is the part of your soul that's always connected to divine essence. But and then what happens is she gives Seeker Mead, and then there's a permanent change in character. So Mead leads to a precious marriage between the Seeker and the divine. And that is what truly changes the person. But in Völund, it's him actually that giving his soul Mead, because he's been on this quest for so long. So he's an elf. So straight away we're dealing with a more advanced being. And his name even means the land of the path. So he's a yogi, basically. They don't say he's a yogi, they say he's an elf. But are using terminology that we recognize today. So this is the story. But remember, he represents you and me. And every character is part of the seeker. And unfortunately, because we put our modern brain on things, and now everything is about drama, duality, and conflict and oppression. So people think that this is because he's an elf and he's a smith, that people think low status, and then they think, he's captured by a king whose name means downstairs. So if you know how to translate the names, you know that he's captured by his own subconscious, but he's doing it on purpose because he wants this vision quest. But people take these stories literally and say this is a story about oppression, because we're kind of stuck in this victim mentality right now. And I'm not saying there are no real victims. Of course there are victims. But the answer that our ancestors gave us was always be on the vision quest and you will take control back in your life again. So Völund is the least oppressed character. He's the least oppressed character. He is actually a yogi. So the seeker is wands. It's often a man in the stories. It represents a part of you that is spirit, that wants to go on a vision quest. And the feminine is your soul, maiden with mead. So Völund, he has two brothers, and they come across three Valkyries swimming in a stream of water. So that's a symbolism of sacred marriage. But the seeker has not yet received precious mead, so there hasn't been sacred marriage yet. But we know that there is a soul connection here because they're swimming in a stream of water. And he has two brothers. His two brothers are called Egil, Terror, and Slagfidr, Battlefin. They're also aspects of him as well. So when they come across these three Valkyries, they steal their feathers because they have like these swan feathers. They're taking them off to swim. So they steal the feathers and then they make them their wives. And the names of the Valkyries are Olrun, meaning leash, secret, Alvit, meaning all-knowing, and Svanrit, meaning white swan. And Völund is married to Alvit, meaning all-knowing. And they remained with their husbands for 9 years. And by the end of this time, they had recovered their swan feathers and they flew away, basically. And the brothers took this loss very, very bad because there's part of their soul that has basically gone missing. And Egil and Slagfinn, they went in search of them. But Völund, he remained at home. And he found solace in the ring which Alvit had given him. And it was a love token. And he's a very clever smith. So he manufactured 700 identical rings. So he's been on the Vision Quest many, many, many times before. And he binds them all together. And then one day he discovers that one of the rings are missing. And he gets excited because he thinks maybe his wife is back again. So this is his initiation to go on the Vision Quest. Then he's surprised in his sleep and he's bound and taken prisoner by King Nidhad, meaning downstairs. So they thought we would understand that this is a symbol of downstairs, meaning the subconscious. And he's bound similar to when, there's a hanging ritual, but he's free to work in his smithy. And despite this captivity, he's plotting his revenge. There's drama and tension in this story, as in all the stories. But he starts working on wings, similar to Alvit, her Valkyrie wings, so he can escape as well. And one day, Nidhad, King Nidhad, his subconscious, asks him to repair a stolen sword that has magical abilities. And Völund, he cleverly substitutes another weapon identical to the magical sword. So now he has his own sword. And a few days later, Völund tricked the king's sons into his smithy, and he slays them, basically. So this is where you hear people take this story literally. They kind of feel like they need to explain this. And, this happened a long, long time ago, No one who understands how to interpret these stories believes that people are actually slaying children. It's always characters in the subconscious that has to die off in all the Vision quests. So this is just another metaphor for ego death. Then he turns their eyes into jewels, and he turned their skulls into drinking vessels. So now we know there's about to be precious mead. And he shares the jewels with the royal family, and they are, they accepted this. And they think that their sons have just drifted out to sea and drowned. The king's daughter, Böðvilder, meaning brave one, she visits Völund to have her ring repaired. So now they brought Alvit back again. The reintroduction of the ring, it's his soul that's back. That's what it means. And a similar clever metaphor is used in Grimnismal when Anna, who ended up living in a cave with an ogre, is reintroduced as Geirrod's son, offering meat to Odin. I've talked about this story in this video in one of these corners. So while Böðvilder waits, she partakes in a magic drug, so precious mead, so he bewitches her, basically. So he's an evolved, very skilled Vision Quester. So he knows what to do. He knows he needs to have a soul retrieval. So he has sacred divine union with his soul, and basically it says that Völund impregnates her. Then he takes his sword and he takes his wings and he flies to Nidhad's throne. And he tells him what he's done. So he says, "It was me that killed your sons, and I impregnated your daughter." Then the king says, "You couldn't have told me anything worse, and now you are so high that no one on horseback can reach you and no one could shoot you down." So Völund flying high basically means he's about to go up out of the Vision Quest. So he's deep within himself in an altered state of consciousness. Now he's coming back up into full consciousness. This is similar to, the Vision Quest is actually seen in the tarot card. Hangman, hanging ritual, death, ego death. You have to overcome yourself. There's a challenge there. In the devil card, false ego down, tower. Then it's back up again from the Vision Quest. That's the star. The light is far away. Moon, the light is closer. Sun, the light is on. So This is a symbol seen in the Vision Quest stories. Odin flies out of the Clashing Rock Mountain after being with Gunnlod. He flies out as an eagle. And then Suttungr, who is another part of himself, tries to catch him. So there still is drama and tension going on. But what happens then in that story, Odin shares Medo poetry, so it represents the change in character, basically. But now, the king has summoned Egil, remember? Meaning terror. So it's part of himself. He's still battling a bit of a part of himself. And he says, shoot Völund down, because he has archery skills. But then, Völund being in full control again, this is about someone who's very gifted at this. He knows how to signal to terror, meaning, Egil, meaning terror, to shoot at a protuberance he has under his wing. And that's the blood of the princess. So Egil hits that, and it basically the blood of the princess, not his own blood. So it basically speaks of that the true self cannot be harmed. And also it shows that he's in control over Egil, who is a part of his subconscious that deals with uncomfortable situations and terror. So he escapes triumphantly without hurt. The true character cannot be hurt. Then Völund being an elf, he returns to Alfheim. He finds his beloved wife and they live happily ever after. Lasting change in character, basically. So this story is not about oppression. This is actually about someone who's very, very empowered. And they told this story, so we know when we go on this holy journey and we investigate our subconscious and we stay on this journey, we will become like Völund ourselves. We will actually be in control of our emotions. We will be in control of our destiny. We will work with the laws really well, spiritual laws, universal laws. We will understand all that stuff. So that's what the story of Völund is. But it has, of course, people say it's about oppression because everything has to be negative. It can't be self-empowerment. Even self-empowerment is being twisted into some kind of oppressive thing. And that's just the days we are living, unfortunately. But we can free ourselves from that paradigm as well. Because even that is a symptom of not being on the Vision Quest. When we're not on the Vision Quest, we are a victim of Egil terror, But Völund knew how to control Egil terror. So he controlled his emotions. So he had been on the Vision Quest so many times. So guys, I hope this gives you motivation to go on the Vision Quest. I love the Vision Quest myself. I do it in dream time a lot. I ask my guides to show me a program I need to work on. And they will basically dream a program. When I wake up, I analyze it and I see what my bottom belief, fears and all of that is. It's a very, very effective way of going on the Vision Quest. Some of you might already have your own ways of doing it. So just stick to it, stick with it. And the results and the rewards are incredible because it basically means peace, inner peace. That is what everybody wants. So this is how you get it, basically. Bye, guys.